following my inspiration from Jude Hill of Spirit Cloth today. She came up because I was watching a Zach Foster video where he was showing mini quilts, and he brought up a technique from Jude, and I remembered that I had started Spirit Cloth in 2018 or 19, something before COVID, probably 18. And I had been making my way through it, and then everything came up with my mom, and then COVID, and then I packed all my fabric stuff up, and it's been a slow process to get my fabric practice going again in this new house because my painting and collage seems to have taken a front seat, and books. But something Jude said in a video I rewatched today is that she likes to talk about her process and her observations as she's going through. And she'll often talk out loud to herself, but now that she is making a course, there's the videos that she makes for her students. So we end up hearing her talk to herself. So this is me talking to myself about what I'm searching for and noticing the difference between watching an instructional video, which the Zach Foster video was really helpful just to think about how small a quilt could be and how easy it could be to just make a small quilt. Because for me, a quilt involves like finding space and finding the substrate to be able to make something that I would consider like something that would fit across a bed or a tablecloth, which is just so big. And I've really, I guess the last time I thought that big was my Gettysburg tapestries, which I'm not sure why those were just so automatic to me. Maybe it was knowing that I would be doing something at the library. So I went for that and I committed to that, and I really don't believe that I completed those big tapestries, but I did. I'm just reflecting on the fact that I did that just now because I had, that was at Alcatraz, and I had that set up REI table in the middle of our front room, which was at one time a yoga studio and then quickly became my everything art space. And I made a lot of paintings there. I just didn't care, and I want to access that energy again of just having this space that I use and I don't care that it's mine. And I suppose I do that in here. There's just not a lot of floor space for me to work in. It's more tables and a lot of storage for materials. So I've learned that my next ideal space will need to have room for both storage and a lot of open table and floor space. And floor space, I think, is really important because somehow I can move my body, and tables still end up being places where I set things down. When there's open floor space, I don't tend to set things down on the floor. I love an open floor space for moving my body. So back to the Zach Foster mini quilt. That was very inspiring because I just was seeing like, okay, it can be that simple. Then when he mentioned Jude Hill, I went back to her course and started looking at some of her videos, and she's really showing, and her art school background really comes through now when I see it, because she has a lot of thought processes around why she does things and what she's exploring when she does a project. And she starts to do like series of things, and I feel like people who go to art school got trained in doing like 30 of something when you think of an idea. And that's something that's always burned me out. Like I did some of those. I did the Badass Women project. But then right after that is when I was like, I'm never doing this again. And then the 50-50 project, I was like, I'm never painting a 6x6 again. So that's something to just accept about myself, that I'm beginning to slowly accept. So I wanted to notice the difference between watching an instructional video like this particular one from Zach, which was inspiring to just open up the possibility that a quilt can be any size. It can be very small or it can be very large, but a quilt is just putting pieces together. And then it's a collage. And for me, stitching is like gluing. So if I think of a quilt as a collage and stitching like gluing, I come back to these pages, which have been really freeing for me to discover, the blank canvas, which is these 5x7 pieces of fabric that were pre-cut and chosen as 20 pages. And so that structure was pre-chosen. And then because of the discipline of having 20 of them to do and 5 days to spend on them, and just the stitching, I discovered different colors of embroidery floss, and then I revisited yarn, which I've just always had. I love yarn, but I don't want to knit. I don't like knit things. I don't like the texture of knitting. I don't like how it's all just like the same texture. It's like, to me, it's like paint that's just flat, and it just doesn't inspire me. I don't cuddle up to knitted things, but I love stitches. I love the texture of stitches, and I love the texture of yarn somehow glued with stitches onto fabric. So to me, these pages, as they're evolving, as I look at where I've gone with it from page 1, which was fun. I remember page 1 still, doing page 1 and how thrilling it was. And to get to page 15 at this point and to be doing, big chunky yarn, thinner yarn, and still doing applique and still doing freeform stitching and still enjoying just running stitches and just the feeling of them on a piece of fabric. I feel like there's something I'm searching for and getting to in this process about telling a story with these elements, because I just enjoy the tactile experience so much. And I think it does have to do with these other things that I've started, which this is a weaving, or so like a pulling the yarn through a mesh bag, and these mesh bags were on my pear trees. And it's just this experiment with like what a structure, some kind of a base, which I'm imagining as being wire. I have never worked with wire, but I see Cam working with wire, and like how you can shape it and make some kind of a framework so that this yarn can have a dimensionality to it. But this is just an experiment with, the idea of a bird's nest, maybe. And I remember the bird's nest I found in that tree and how fascinating it was. And I think what I want to do after I establish sort of this base, and I already started stitching a little bit on here with thinner threads and just running through in the opposite direction. But what I want to do is incorporate smaller elements of pieces of fabric throughout here by stitching them down that remind me of that structure of the bird's nest, and how the birds just literally stuck in little pieces here and there, because obviously they don't have a loom, but they're just weaving in whatever they find in whatever shape. I love that, the idea of a bird's nest. And then this is the newest thing with this story idea, where I took a very long length of muslin strip, just kind of impossibly long for me, and started in the middle. And I started with this idea of telling the story in my mind of my journey with yoga. And I didn't do it linearly, where I was like, okay, this represents this person, place, or time. But I was contemplating as I was arranging different fabrics. So I braided this yarn as I was contemplating, where did I start yoga? And it happened to be at a gym in Ann Arbor. And I remembered Shay, and I remembered Andrea, the fitness director, and I was thinking, then I thought about Deb and our long, circuitous friendship that has had a lot of pauses in it, but a lot of profound connection also. And just, and then this thread, this yarn that I bought, but I love that it's basically a base of white with this these colored shiny pieces just sort of woven into parts, sections of it, coming in and out. I just love that. I don't even want to know why, but I just love it. And I did some braiding, and so this braiding process right here, which I did, took me 45 minutes to do, like a few inches, by taping one end down and just literally braiding it and then tying each end, really got me wondering about ways to anchor one end and really spin. Now I know the word spin, but twist one yarn around the next. And that's how what led me to the Art Yarn Maker, which is arriving tomorrow from Saori Studio LA, Laura Roveda. And Saori weaving is like a new discovery within the last week of, wow, freestyle, which is really what I'm doing. Freestyle weaving as a way to discover self and not, follow any rules about, how things need to be put together. So this I just adore. It's in process. And also it feels so complete just to interact with at this moment. The whole length of it, it's like, here we are. I started out contemplating a time of my life, and then it became more about the visual, but also, wow, look at that. I haven't really looked at that. Continuing the contemplation, so I can come in and out of the contemplation of the specific and go back to the visual tactile experience. And they're all in there. It doesn't have to be like a direct narrative, which is kind of, when I started this, I was frustrated with the constraints of what we call writing and what writing has become and how text-based our belief in knowledge has become, when I know that knowledge is from the movement and the making and this interaction that I'm having right now, even as I simultaneously look at and touch something and remember something and imagine something else I want to add to it. This is another thread right here that's woven and wound around a yarn. And this has that same idea of not additional pieces wound like that, but frayed areas. So the thing that I'm really looking forward to with the Saori Art Yarn Maker is to have thicker sections of yarn so that the diameter of the filament of the yarn is not uniform along the length of it, that it has much thicker sections and then much thinner sections and different materials spun into different sections. This is the first art yarn I ever got. I still love it. But it's like a ribbon, and then it has some frayed sections every few inches like that. So, and why does that feel like life itself? Oh, wow, look at that. I did not even remember that I'd done this, which was tie a little section and twist it around. Why does this feel like life, like an accurate representation of life to me? And more accurate depiction of a story than any story structure that has been presented in a workshop or text on how to tell a story. I don't know. I mean, I have a knowing in my feeling world because this is a feeling to me, like a reflection of something. But will the collective brain of our human race have the ability to read something like this as a text going forward with our text-based society? So I'm really encouraged to meet all these different textile artists who acknowledge that they're experiencing something from interacting with fiber. And I am totally about breaking the rules of how yarn is used. I mean, I did a search on yarn murals or yarn arts, and it's just so limited. Nobody's showing just like putting together these beautiful disparate collections of yarns and just experiencing that. And I don't really care that I'm the only one doing this, because I'm experiencing a lot of joy and wonder from this. And I'm also de-stressing from the idea that I have to create a PowerPoint presentation for a class that I may or may not teach. And I just think that I'm just like so over having to prepare PowerPoints and pretend that there's a way to convey information that way that's useful for something like making art, which there isn't. It's about picking up these materials and getting into relationship immediately with yourself. And look at that. I just love the discovery of sort of trying to decipher. Like, there's part of me that wants to just keep this intact and let it be itself and have it fall. And then there's part of me that wants to comb it out. And there's part of me that wants to like take individual strands and try to follow them. And then there's the discovery of things that are hidden that I like this. I keep like going, wow, where was that? And so this is everything. And I want to get back into this actually right after I turn off this video, because I know I did not work on this in Durango at all. And it just didn't call to me to do any stitching in Durango. But here in this space, in this life I have here, it's totally almost the only thing I want to do besides planting seeds and tending to the animals. Well, go figure. So with the Jude, just finishing up with my comment on the Jude Hill instructional videos, when it was too much about doing a particular technique, like how to do, then it was like I switched into some mode like, oh, I have to do it that way, or oh, I have to now try to imitate her in order to get it right. And it's a really interesting psychological flip that happens where there's certain ways of teaching and demonstrating that feel really opening to me, opening to possibility, like, oh, I can do X, Y, and Z, and it opens up like so many more other things I can do. And other types of instruction feel constricting, like, oh God, I have to do it that way, otherwise I'm not doing it. And so I had to turn off those Jude Hill videos pretty quickly today and just get back to this, just responding to what's here. What is in front of me and what will I do? What will my hands and imagination do? And this started out as a cut up towel with some print painted on there, and I just started adding a little fabric, and I just wanted yarn to be a big part of it because I had been working on this. So you can see there's pieces of it, and then I, included some regular applique, some experiment. This is actually an experiment with a Jude Hill technique of trying to fray the edges of an applique. And this I just like because it looks like someone's braid. It could be like a girl from the back. but this is just the way the yarn ended. And I think I'm just going to leave it there. But, this, I just really like looking at. I like all of these things right now. And that's important for me to note when I really like things and when they really make me feel happy. Unlike PowerPoint,